She was hanging by her wrist in the middle of a Kansas summer. Her dress ripped at the seams from the struggle. Her bare feet scraping uselessly against a post sunk deep into dry earth. The rope cut into Claire Mayhart's skin. And every time the hot wind pushed her body sideways, it twisted her just enough to steal another breath below her. A man stood close enough to touch her. He was a rancher once, and the land had taken most things from him, but not his eyes. Elijah Cutter didn't reach for the rope. He didn't look away either. He stood there with his hat low over his eyes, studying her bruised legs, the dirt on her knees, the way her strength was fading. He was counting seconds, not doubting her, because men who tie cattle knots do not leave a girl alone for long. For a long second that felt longer than a church sermon in August. It looked like he was deciding whether she was worth the trouble or worth something else. Her voice cracked before her body did. "Please, I'm begging you." The words came out dry and broken as if even her throat had been tied too tight. Eli's jaw shifted once, slow, like a man chewing on an old memory. He didn't answer her. He turned his head and looked toward the ranch house instead. From the road. Anyone passing might have thought he owned the place, might have thought the girl belonged to him, might have thought this was discipline, not desperation. That was the first misunderstanding. The second was worse. She'd been left there as a lesson until the buyer returned. Claire's mother had been buried just 9 days earlier in the small cemetery outside Dodge City, and the earth over that grave had not even settled flat. Her stepfather, Silas Rook, had wasted no time settling his own affairs. A gambler's debts move faster than grief, and grief does not argue back when there is a bottle in the room. Eli stepped closer now, but not to comfort her. He crouched and ran his fingers along the rope where it had been tied to the beam. A cattle knot pulled tight, then doubled back so it would not slip under weight. Whoever tied it had known exactly how much strain it would hold. Clara watched his hands, terrified he might pull it tighter. The heat shimmered across the open range near Dodge City, and the cycas screamed loud enough to cover the sound of a distant door creaking. Eli lifted his eyes again, and this time past her shoulder. Fresh horse tracks cut across the dust near the fence line. 2 animals ridden hard, not more than an hour old. He stood slowly for a heartbeat. It seemed he would walk away. The wind pressed Clara's torn dress against her skin, exposing the purple bruise on her thigh where she had kicked and fought. She swallowed hard and forced the words again. "Please, I'm begging you." That was when he finally moved, not toward her, toward his own saddle. His hand hovered near the rifle scabbard from the outside to anyone who didn't know him. It looked like a man preparing to claim what had been left unattended. But Elijah Cutter was not thinking about possession. He was thinking about timing. He stepped back to her, reached up, and cut the rope clean in one motion. Clara dropped into his arms harder than he expected. She weighed less than she should have. He set her down carefully on the dry grass. "You stay quiet," he said low. Not unkind, but not gentle either. She tried to stand and nearly fell. He caught her elbow steady and firm. In the distance, a barn door slammed. Eli didn't look surprised. He had known from the moment he saw the knot that the man who tied it would come back. Before we go one step further, let me say this plain. What you are about to hear is rebuilt from old accounts and frontier talk with a few details added for clarity lessons and the human weight of it all. The visuals are AI made only to help you feel the heat, the dust, and the fear of that Kansas summer. Now, stay with me because the next choice Eli makes is the kind of choice that still divides good men today. If the story hits you, leave a comment so I know and I will bring you more like it. Now, here's what most folks miss. Claire was not just tied up for punishment. She was left as proof. Silas wanted the next man to see she could be controlled. And Eli saw something else. Something that made his blood run cold. There were no cries from the ranch house. No neighbors riding in. No one coming to help. That meant this was not a mistake. It was a routine. And routines do not stop on their own. If Eli cut her loose, he would be chased. If he walked away, she would be sold before sundown. So tell me this. If you were standing in that dust, which kind of man would you be? Eli poured a little water from his canteen into Clara's shaking hands. She drank too fast and coughed. "Who did this?" he asked. "My stepfather," she whispered. Silas Rook. The name meant nothing to most men in Kansas. To Eli, it meant just enough. He had heard it once in a saloon near the Santa Fe Trail. A man who owed money. A man who solved debts with paper and signatures instead of sweat. "Why?" Eli asked. Claire's eyes filled. But she didn't break. "He sold me," she said. Not loud. Not dramatic. Just a fact laid bare in the sun. "Sold," she explained in broken pieces. "To a traveling broker who promised work along the Santa Fe line. Waitressing, housekeeping, easy money." Silas had signed his legal guardian after her mother's burial. There had been a paper with a seal. There had been a witness who didn't ask questions. When Clara refused to go quietly, she scratched one man's face and tried to run for Dodge City. Silas caught her before she reached the road. He dragged her back, tied her outside where she could see the sky, and told her she would learn obedience before the buyers returned. Eli listened without interrupting. He didn't react when she said buyers. He had driven freight along the Cimarron River years ago. He knew what kind of work moved quietly between Kansas and farther south. He stood and looked again toward the ranch house. A curtain shifted in an upstairs window. Someone was watching. "You can walk?" he asked. She nodded though her legs trembled. "We leave now," he said. "Before he comes back. He's already on his way." Claire's breath caught. Eli tightened the strap on his saddle. He didn't smile. He didn't promise safety. He simply calculated distance. Dodge City was less than 2 hours if they cut across open range. But Dodge City had deputies. Deputies respected papers with seals, and men like Silas carried papers. Eli helped Clara into the saddle in front of him. From the porch of the ranch house, a door opened wide. A man stepped out, hatless, red-faced, shouting words the wind swallowed. Eli turned his horse without hurry. He didn't wave. He didn't run. He rode behind them. 7:23. The shouting turned to threats ahead of them. The trail shimmered in heat. Clara leaned back against his chest, weak but alive. And Eli Cutter, 52 years old and long past believing in clean endings, made a choice that would not be undone. Because once a man interferes with a signed contract on the Kansas frontier, he does not just rescue a girl. He declares himself against the men who profit from her. 7:49. The question is not whether Silas Rook will chase them. The question is whether Elijah Cutter plans to outrun him or bury him. Eli didn't push the horse hard at first. A man who runs too fast across open Kansas range draws eyes he does not need. He kept a steady pace, cutting across the dry grass instead of taking the main road toward Dodge City. 8:09. Claire sat in front of him, her back light against his chest, her breathing uneven but stronger than before. After a mile, she found her voice again. "He will come after me," she said. "He will?" Eli answered. He didn't dress it up. Silas Rook was not the kind of man who lost money quietly. And Clara was not a daughter in his mind. She was payment. 8:33. They rode in silence for a while, the wind pressing warm and heavy against their faces. Eli watched the horizon the way older men do. Not nervous, just careful. "You said he sold you," Eli said at last. Claire nodded. "He called at work," she said. "Said I would serve meals along the Santa Fe line. Said I would earn enough to clear his debts." 8:56. "And you believed him?" "I wanted to," she admitted. That answer hit closer than she knew. Most trouble on the frontier didn't begin with evil. It began with someone wanting to believe something was not as bad as it looked. "He had a paper," she went on with a seal. "A witness signed it after my mother's burial." Eli's jaw tightened slightly. 9:19. Paper with a seal carried weight in Dodge City, especially when the girl signing it had just buried the only person who would have argued. "He filed for guardianship," Eli said. She turned her head slightly. "You know about that. I know men who drink and lose money. Look for clean ways to fix dirty problems." She swallowed. 9:40. "I told him I would not go. I fought the broker. Scratched his face. Tried to reach town and he tied you up." Eli finished. He said I would learn obedience before they came back. The word obedience hung in the air like dust. Eli had seen that word used too many times. They crested a low-rise and Dodge City showed faint in the distance. 10:04. Smoke roofs. A thin line of movement. Claire stiffened. If we go there, he will find me. Yes, Eli said. Then why are we going? Because I need to see something. She didn't argue. That told him more about her than tears would have. When they reached the edge of town, Eli didn't ride down Front Street. 10:25. He turned toward a livery stable run by an old freight contact who asked few questions. Clara slid down slowly, wincing as her feet touched ground. Eli noticed the bruising on her wrists more clearly now. Not deep cuts, just the kind that hurt for days. Inside the stable, it was cooler. Eli handed the reins over and asked for a bucket of water. 10:48. No long stories, no speeches, and just what was needed while Clara washed dust from her face. Eli stepped outside and crossed toward the courthouse building. He didn't go in. He stood across the street, hat low, watching who entered and who left. After 10 minutes, he saw him. Silas Rook, walking out with a folded paper in his hand, laughing with Deputy Harlan Voss. That told Eli enough. 11:16. When Silas left, Voss stayed behind. Eli crossed the street. Inside, the air smelled of ink and heat. He didn't introduce himself. He simply asked to see the filed guardianship papers for Claire Hart. Voss looked at him long and slow. Family matter. Voss said she is 18. Eli answered, old enough to refuse. Not if her guardian signed for contracted work. 11:41. The word contracted rolled off of Voss's tongue like it was honest labor. Eli didn't argue. He had heard that tone before. Men like Voss didn't need to shout. They had paper. And paper was stronger than rope in towns like this. And that was the trap. A good man could do the right thing and still lose. All Silas had to do was point at that seal and the town would call it lawful. Eli knew what came next. 12:06. A deputy escort, a wagon waiting, a girl told to stop making trouble. Then the trail would swallow her and no one would ever say her name out loud again. That is why Eli did not argue with Voss. He was not trying to win a debate. He was trying to win time. And time was the only thing Clara had left. 12:27. And that meant if he made one mistake, Claire would be handed back like lost property. Eli stepped back into the sun and understood the shape of the problem. If Silas held legal guardianship and the contract was filed, then Dodge City would not rescue Clara. They would escort her back. He returned to the stable. 12:48. Clara looked up at him, searching his face for hope. Well? She asked quietly. They have a paper, he said. Her shoulders dropped. He wins then. Paper wins in town. Eli corrected. Out on the range things work different. She studied him carefully. You are not afraid of him. She said, I'm not impressed by him. That almost drew a faint smile from her, but it faded quickly. 13:15. He will come tonight, she whispered. Yes. And the deputy likely. Eli leaned against the stall door. He had two choices. Leave her at the mercy of a town that trusted ink more than truth, or step outside the line and stay there. He had lived most of his life just inside that line, working cattle, hauling freight, keeping his hands mostly clean, mostly. 13:38. He looked at Claire again, thin, bruised, still holding her back straight despite it all. You willing to ride hard? He asked. She nodded without hesitation. Good, he said, because if we leave now, we do not come back asking for permission. Outside, a church bell rang the hour. Late afternoon, heat still heavy. Plenty of light left for men to saddle up and follow. Eli straightened. 14:05. If you have made it this far, you can see this is not just a story about one girl. It is about what happens when the law and what is right stop being the same thing. If you're listening right now, go ahead and subscribe. There are more stories like this, and some of them cut even deeper. Pour yourself a cup of coffee or tea. 14:25. Sit back and tell me in the comments what time it is, where you are, and what town you are listening from. I always like knowing who is riding along. Eli stepped into the saddle again. Clara climbed in front of him without being told. This time, he didn't head toward the open prairie. He turned toward the Cimarron River Trail. 1445. Behind them somewhere in Dodge City, Silas Rook was finishing his drink. And when he discovered the stall empty, he would not shout first. He would smile because men who trade human lives for money do not panic. They hunt. The question now was simple. Would Eli Cutter run long enough, or would he turn and decide that some debts do not get paid with paper at all? Snorts Eli didn't ride straight along the Cimarron River. 1513. He angled off, keeping the water a mile to his left, using low ridges to break their outline. Clara didn't ask questions this time. She held the saddle horn with steady hands. Behind them, Dodge City was shrinking. Ahead of them, the Santa Fe Trail cut across Kansas like a scar that never quite healed. After an hour, Eli slowed the horse. 1534. Dust hung in the air farther south. Wagon dust more than one. He guided the horse up a small rise and stopped. From there they could see them. 3 wagons, 4 mounted men, 2 women riding in the back of the second wagon, sitting too straight, too quiet. Clara's breath caught. "I know one of them," she said softly. Eli didn't look at her. "From church," she added. 1557. "Her name is Ruth." That was enough. This was not just about one contract anymore. The wagons moved slow, heavy with cargo. Not a cattle drive, not freight. Something else. Eli watched the riders. One wore a familiar shape in the saddle. Broad shoulder, short temper. Silas Rook. He didn't waste time, Claire whispered. "No," Eli said. 1625. "Men like him never do." They stayed hidden until the wagons passed below them. Eli counted distances. Distance to the river. Distance to the next bend in the trail. Distance to sunset. "You are not thinking of chasing them alone," Claire said. He gave her the smallest look. "I'm thinking that was honest." 1648. Oh, he had no badge, no posy. No authority beyond what he carried on his belt and in his bones if he attacked straight on. He would be outnumbered if he ran. Clara would spend the rest of her life looking over her shoulder. He studied the second wagon again. One of the women looked up just for a second. Their eyes met across open space. 1710. She looked away fast, like someone who had already learned not to ask for help. Eli felt something old and bitter stir in his chest. He turned the horse back down the slope. "We follow," he said. They kept their distance, staying out of sight but close enough to track. The trail dipped toward a shallow bend near the Cimarron River. 1728. Water there ran slow this time of year. Good place to rest horses. Good place to exchange money without town eyes. As they moved, Clara spoke quietly. "You have done this before." "What?" "Followed men like that." He thought about answering with something sharp. He did not. "I hauled freight 10 years on this line." 1753. He said, "You learn what different cargo looks like and you did nothing." The question was not accusing. It was tired. Eli exhaled slowly. "I was paid to drive wagons, not save the world." She nodded once. That hurt more than if she had argued. By late afternoon, the wagon slowed near a stand of cottonwoods by the river. 1813. 2 riders moved ahead, checking the ground. Eli stopped again on higher ground. "This is where it happened," he said. "What happens? Money changes hands. Papers get signed. After that, no one asks where the girls go." Clara swallowed. "And Ruth and anyone else in those wagons?" He studied the layout. One wagon near the trees, one slightly behind. 1838. Men relaxed but armed. Silas riding loose, confident. Confidence made men careless. Eli turned to Clara. "When I say ride, you ride for the riverbend and do not look back. And you, I will handle the rest." She didn't accept that easily. "I'm not hiding," she said. He almost smiled. "You already fought once. That's enough for today." 1904. Below them, a rider approached from the south. A single horse, clean hat, straight posture. Deputy Harlan Voss. Clara's fingers tightened on the saddle horn. "He's here," she whispered. "Yes," Eli said. That changed the weight of things. This was no longer a desperate father chasing a runaway girl. This was a business meeting protected, signed, witnessed. 1930. Eli felt the line he had lived inside most of his life begin to fade. If the law stood with Silas here, then what happened next would not be called rescue. It would be called interference. He watched as Voss dismounted and shook Silas's hand. Papers were brought out. One of the women in the wagon shifted, trying not to look. 1951. Claire's breathing grew shallow again. Eli, she said quietly. He didn't answer. He was measuring wind, distance, fear, and something else. He reached down and checked the rifle in the scabbard. Not dramatic, just certain. Claire saw it. You're going to do something you cannot take back, she said. He kept his eyes on the cottonwoods. Yes, below them. 2017. Silas laughed at something. Voss dude. The sound carried up the rise like it belonged to a man who believed he had already won. Eli slid from the saddle. He handed Clara the res. When I move, he said calmly. You ride. She nodded. The river glinted in the late sun. The men below had no idea they were being watched. 2041. And in less than a minute, Elijah Cutter would decide whether he was still a man who followed the law or a man who rewrote it with one pull of a trigger. Eli didn't rush down that slope. Men who rush die first. He walked 10 steps to the left, lowering himself behind a line of scrub brush that broke his shape against the sky below. Silas and Deputy Voss stood near the wagon, heads bent over paper.